Have you ever noticed how it seems like a lot of people in today's society have weakened the word believer? We have almost made it into this ultimate stamp of approval. Like, oh, hey, they're a believer, and we just check a box, simply move on. But I've been sitting with this question lately, and I really wonder, have we made the word believer smaller than what the Bible ever intended it to be? Honestly, when I hear someone called a believer nowadays, I find myself thinking, man, I hope they're more than just that. And I know that sounds heavy and probably even a little bit controversial, but here's the reality. Even the demons believe. So today on Beyond Church Walls, I want to navigate through this and see if our modern Christian culture is distorting the gospel by making a belief a passive thing. And more importantly, what does it actually look like to move from just agreeing with God to actually following Him? Let's get into today's episode titled, More Than Just a Believer. Welcome to Beyond Church Walls. I am your host, Brad Crow. Around here, we discuss various topics from a biblical perspective and the perspective of Christ followers. Thank you for joining today, and I hope you enjoy the podcast. Hey, welcome back to the podcast, and I'm so glad you've decided to tune in to another episode. As you could probably tell from that intro, I've developed a bit of a thing about being called a believer. And to be very clear, it's not that the Bible uses the word badly, obviously. It's that we have watered it down in our culture. Believer has become this very safe, very comfortable label. You might even say it has become an extremely inclusive label. Think about going up to someone on the street and asking them if they are a believer. The last survey I looked at, it said that roughly around 60% of Americans claim to be Christian. So if you were to go up to someone in the U.S., you have about a 60% chance of coming up to someone that would claim to be a Christian. So they would tell you that they agree that Jesus is real. They think he's the Son of God and that they think he died for their sins. And so for many people, that's it. They are a believer. But outside of that, there is no other expectations. You see their Tuesday morning, their Friday nights, they all look the same. Their lives are no different because of that belief. But when we open the New Testament, we see something totally different. In John chapter 3, verse number 16, the verse we all know by heart, that word believes isn't just mental agreement. Actually, in the original Greek, that word means to trust in, rely on, and cling to. It's not just a head thing. My daughter, she actually just left a couple of days ago for Rome. She's doing a 10-week study abroad program for the summer. And we were at the airport around 7 a.m. on Mother's Day, which was a very happy Mother's Day to my wife. We aren't frequent flyers. This was only her second time on a plane. When she clicked purchase on that plane ticket around Christmas, she believed the airplane could fly. She had the facts. She saw the physics, but that belief alone was not going to get her to Italy. It wasn't until she walked onto the plane, sat down in her seat, and let that plane take her 30,000 feet in the air that everything changed. It was at that point she moved from simply agreeing the plane worked to relying on the plane to carry her somewhere. That is exactly what I'm talking about today. A lot of people are holding a ticket, but they refuse to stand in the terminal. They refuse to let that plane physically take them up into the air. Jesus did not walk along the Sea of Galilee and yell, "Hey, you just need to agree with me." He said, "Follow me." And what does Jesus say in Luke chapter 9? If anyone wants to come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross daily, and follow me. I'm convinced that a lot of people have settled for a foundational faith. They've got the foundation poured, but they never actually build the house. They're standing on the concrete slab, wondering why they're getting pelted every time it storms. I want to share a personal story with you today where I found myself living in the gap between belief and following. I was about 20 years old and I was the believer guy. I went to church. I had the right answers. I knew what I believed. And a group of us went on this fishing trip. It was one of those classic trips where you camp out, you fish for a couple of days. It's just the guys. And not long after getting there, we kind of got set up a little bit and we were getting our fishing gear out. And all of a sudden, this woman starts screaming. We just hear this woman frantically screaming, not really knowing what is going on. And her husband is having a heart attack and she is screaming, trying to get someone's attention so that she can get help. And right there in the middle of that chaos, when we figure out what's going on, my friend says, "Hey, we need to pray for him right now." And if I'm being honest with you, my first reaction wasn't, yes, praise God for a man of faith. My first reaction was discomfort. I felt awkward. I knew prayer was important and what was needed for this situation, but I didn't want to be the one that asked them if we could pray. And to be completely honest with you, I really did not want to lead that prayer. But my friend, he just didn't care. He just prayed for that man like it was the most natural thing in the world. And that moment has often replayed in my mind in a good way for years because it exposed a huge leak in my faith. I believed prayer worked. I believed God was a healer. I had the theology, but I did not want the responsibility of it. I did not want the social cost of following Jesus into a messy, awkward situation. I was a believer, but I really wasn't a follower in that moment. And I think a lot of us have a similar gap. We believe the right things, but when Jesus says, step into this, we hesitate because we're worried about how it looks or how others might respond. This is exactly what the brother of Jesus, James, was talking about in James chapter 2. He says, you believe there is one God, good. Here's the issue, though. He says, even the demons believe that and tremble. Think about that for a second. James is saying that if your faith is just knowing the right things, you're on the same level as a demon. They have correct theology about who God is. They aren't atheists, but that knowledge, it never leads them to trust or obedience. James wraps it up in verse 17 by saying faith by itself, if it does not have works, it is dead. He's basically saying that if you say you believe but your life doesn't move, your faith is a corpse. It's not alive. If you look at the early followers of Jesus, they were called disciples, which is kind of a fancy word for followers. They were people who left their boats and tax booths. They changed their entire direction to be near Jesus. In Acts, we see where early believers were called Christians, and this wasn't a title they gave themselves. It was a nickname given to them by outsiders in Antioch. People looked at them and can tell they lived like they followed Christ. But then we see the opposite in John chapter 12, where many of the leaders believed in Jesus, but they couldn't confess him because they loved the praise of people more than the praise of God. These leaders believed in Jesus, but they chose not to follow. And this is where so many people get stuck. A person can claim to be a believer for 20, 30, 40, 50 years and remain basically the same person the entire time because they have a head knowledge of who Jesus is. But a follower, a true follower, is someone that is being changed. There is a transformation happening. Jesus said in John chapter 10, my sheep, they hear my voice and they follow me. The proof of our faith isn't the prayer we prayed 10 or 20 years ago or the church membership we have. A genuine faith should move us in the direction that he is leading. So here's the question I want to leave you with today. And listen, I'm asking myself this too. Are we more than believers? I'm not asking if we're good people. I'm asking, is Jesus actually leading our lives? Are we following him even when things get hard or when it makes us look out of place or different? We have to stop settling for a reduced version of faith that culture has tried to mislead us with. We have to move beyond church walls and become people whose lives actually reflect the one we say we love. Hey, thank you so much for choosing to hang out with me again today. I've been back at this for about 2 months, and honestly, the growth of this channel has been more than I could have imagined. And I really am truly honored that you would choose to spend about 10 or 15 minutes with me. So with that, I will see you back here next week as we keep these conversations going.